Hello, thank you all for joining us today for our Spring Week panel and Q&A. My name is Ragvi, I'm the president of the Guild and so excited to see you all here. Just a quick introduction to the Guild. The Guild is a collegium of St Andrews societies, including the Investment Society, Playfair Consultancy Group, the Management Society, the Economic Society, and the School of Management. And the purpose of the Guild is to foster relationships between these societies and to pool the resources across them to provide career support to students to help them secure the most competitive roles. We have a committee of 6 currently, including Pradyun, Mick and Sophia on events and sponsorship, and Kashika and Anna on social media. And the real aim of the Guild is a few things. So firstly, we believe that there's a misconception amongst St Andrews students that if they get a first-class degree, then they'll be able to secure like any competitive role that they want, but that's not true. It's really important to have soft skills, work experience, society positions as well. Secondly, there's a misconception that your degree subject is important. So students tend to think that if they don't study something like economics or management, they won't be able to secure a finance-related role. But in fact, a lot of the big banks are looking for art students and different science students as well. So it really doesn't matter what you study, you won't be eliminated for most roles because of your degree. Thirdly, we think that students don't start thinking about their career early enough. When you get to 4th year, you might start applying for graduate roles and finding that you don't really have any work experience or any society positions. And if you start applying to Spring Weeks from your first year, then you will be much more equipped to handle difficult applications later on. Finally, breaking into competitive industries like investment banking and strategy consulting is heavily dependent on whether you can create a good CV, a good cover letter, and perform well in interviews. And we think that speaking to students that have secured these roles themselves and that have been through the application process will be better equipped to handle this than the career centre who are looking at it from an outsider's point of view. So introducing Spring Weeks, these are sort of 2-day to 2-week insight programs into a firm, industry and division. They can be general or specific to a division. So a general Spring Week would have kind of an overview of the firm and an introduction to some of the different divisions within that firm. Whereas if it's division specific, then you might focus a little bit more on a particular division, kind of network with some of the people working there, and then hopefully also you would be able to interview for a summer internship at the end of your Spring Week for a summer internship within that division. Also, Spring Weeks do cover a huge range of sectors. They're not just exclusive to banking, as you might have heard or thought. And so even if you're not interested in banking, it is really worth looking into kind of if there are any available Spring Weeks in the industries that you're interested in. And a lot of industries are opening up more and more Spring Week opportunities, so the numbers do increase every year. In terms of like Spring Weeks, they are really the best way to get a summer internship because a Spring Week does generally have lower standards. And at the end of your Spring Week, usually you're invited to complete an assessment centre, which will allow you to essentially secure a summer internship from your kind of second year at university. Whereas summer internships are said to be 5 times harder to secure. So it is a really great way to get your foot in the door at a really big company. Then your summer internship will allow you generally to interview or kind of perform well on the job to get a graduate role at the end of the program. And so you could secure a graduate job by the end of your 3rd year, meaning that there's way less stress on you in your final year. And graduate jobs are even more difficult in some cases to secure than summer internships. So it's a great way to kind of navigate that and get a really competitive graduate job. In terms of the kind of timeline, so you'd apply for spring weeks probably in the next couple of months, sort of between June and September or October. The earlier that you apply, the better, because they generally recruit on a rolling basis, i.e. The first, like once they start getting applications, they'll just start interviewing people straight away rather than waiting for everyone's applications to come in. Then your spring week will usually be sort of March to April of your second year, but some spring weeks are actually in the summer or in September or October, so don't be fooled by the name. It is just called a spring week, but it could be at any point. And then the summer internship offer that you would get would be for the summer of your third year, and then the graduate role would obviously be for after you graduate from university. So this is a QR code that you can scan, and this will allow you to see a list of firms that offer spring week, summer internships, and graduate roles. We'll also be posting this on some of our social media if you missed this now, so don't worry, you'll have access to that. But I would recommend that you kind of create a list of any opportunities that you want to apply to and look at their application opening date rather than just their kind of closing date, and really make sure that you get your application in as soon as possible. So we believe that your career aspirations are hypotheses that require constant testing and validation. The best way to figure out what you want to do after you graduate is to have a good understanding of all of the available options. Roles are evolving daily, new job types are always popping up. Google no longer requires its employees to have gone to university. You don't have to have studied medicine at undergrad to be a doctor. You don't have had to study law to be a lawyer, and no one knows the niches of an industry and how it's changing better than the people that work within it. You can use spring weeks to speak to lots of well-informed people about their career journey and experiment with your interests. And even if you end up doing a spring week in a firm or a division that you decide that you don't particularly like, then you'll be one step closer to figuring out what you do like. So it is really worth doing. A lot of students are confronted with the question of, should I work for a big firm where I would probably be a small cog in a big wheel, or should I work for a startup or kind of a medium-sized, maybe more creative firm? And this is a decision for you, but there are some reasons why it is worthwhile at least starting your career out in a big firm. So firstly, while Excel and PowerPoint work, which is what you probably mostly be doing in consulting or banking, in itself may not seem so intellectually stimulating, this is really a small part of the job. The real learning comes from speaking to your colleagues. All of these people will form your network, which you can draw upon for the rest of your life. Secondly, the exit opportunities. So in 2021, no one expects you to stay in one company or role forever. The exit opportunities for investment banking and consulting are unparalleled. So investment banking is a great place to start to move to the sell side, i.e. private equity, hedge funds, venture capital, etc. Here the work continues to suit someone with an aptitude for finance, but it's generally more interesting, there's a better work-life balance, and the pay is pretty crazy. Meanwhile, consultants tend to leave to perform in-house strategy work for FTSE 500 companies, become CEOs, COOs, join a startup, or go to top business schools. So, for example, around 10 years ago, the admissions rate to Harvard or Stanford Business School from McKinsey, BCG, or Bain, which are the kind of top three elite consulting firms, was around 60%, which is pretty crazy. And that's partly because of the skill set and what you learn at the firm. Thirdly, it is possible, although difficult, to go straight into one of the above roles that I just mentioned straight after graduating, rather than starting off at an investment bank or consulting firm. However, if you're keen on a finance or strategy related role, the kind of skill set that you'd pick up training at an investment bank or consulting firm will be far stronger than in a small division at a firm in a different industry. You'll be much better at what you do, and then you'll be able to go on to the firm or industry of your choice with much more ease. Finally, it is important to consider the benefits of financial freedom. If you want to be an entrepreneur, a few years in a high-paying career could fund your startup without you having to give up equity to a venture capitalist. If you want to retire by 35, you could probably do so by starting out in investment banking with its generous bonuses. If you want to set up a foundation or a social enterprise, again, money is important. Most importantly, if you don't resonate with any reasons, don't apply. Firstly, these are pretty competitive roles. There's no point in wasting time putting in an application with 50% effort when the top students are putting in 100%. If you're applying, you do have to give it your all. Investment banking and strategy consulting are not suitable backups. Secondly, if you do get the position, these are pretty mentally taxing jobs and require a lot of sacrifices, particularly in the early stages, and you should think about this choice carefully. So moving on to the different stages of the application process, these are some of the things that you might have to do within your kind of spring week application process. No one will ask you to do all of these. However, you might find that some firms do have multi-stage processes, and it's not because there are huge barriers to attending a 2-day insight. It's more because ultimately they want their spring week intake to go to to kind of move on to a graduate role. And so what you're doing is almost kind of preparing for the graduate role straight at the beginning, but the kind of expectations that they have for you are lower. So that's why it is a little bit easier still. So in terms of securing spring weeks, these are some of the things that you might want to kind of do and consider. So in terms of good university, good school grades, most of you are at St Andrews, and so there shouldn't be kind of any issues there. In terms of your university grades, because obviously like fourth year is a while away, you don't know what you'll be graduating with in terms of degree choice. I would honestly recommend predicting yourself at first, because you kind of don't know what you're going to get, and it will honestly just put you in the best position to pass as many CV screenings as possible. In terms of leadership, society positions, and any other things that you do, again, these are for the sake of building soft skills. And so when you do take on positions, you shouldn't just kind of do them based on how good they'll look on a CV. You should do them based on how much kind of effort you'll put in, because the more you put into it, the kind of better soft skills you'll gain. You'll be able to talk about them more in interviews and on your CV, and it will just make you a more all-rounded person. Not all of your positions have to be directly related to the role either. You should show that you're kind of an all-rounded person with a variety of interests too. In terms of work experience, holiday work, volunteering, again, when you're in your kind of second year, you're not expected to have a huge amount of this, but some of the top candidates will have a decent amount. So kind of bear that in mind and at least start thinking about this if you haven't already. In terms of your application, do have a very well formatted, clear CV that you've spent time on and you've sent to lots of people to get checked. Same with your cover letter, and keep the formatting of these standard. Don't try and use lots of colors or design or anything, because when you're in HR and you have thousands of CVs to sift through, you just want to be able to see the information that you need kind of straight away. You don't want to be looking around for it. Your test scores are dependent on what you're applying to. So some firms will ask you to kind of do numerical tests, verbal tests, different types of tests, and some of them weight these tests very heavily, whereas it's less important for others. So try and kind of see what's important for the firm that you're applying to. And there are lots of sites where you can practice these. So do spend some time doing that. And then finally, if you do get to interview stage, then it's important that you're well prepared for this and that you have like shown that you've made the choice of what kind of division or role that you're applying to carefully. And like, for example, if it's a finance role, then maybe you study economics and that's why you're interested in it, or maybe you're part of the investment society, but it shouldn't be kind of a decision that you made out of nowhere. You should be able to justify it. So that kind of concludes the initial presentation. Please do like our social medias to keep updated on future events and access to resources. The QR code at the bottom there is a link to our website with a blog full of articles that kind of extend upon some of the things that I mentioned today, as well as have more articles on lots of areas within investment banking and consulting, etc. So it might be useful for you to take a look at this. But I think now we're ready for the next part of this, which is a panel with our guests. So we have a few people here today. Kanishk and Agnes are kind of more on the tech side, and then Omar, Isabella, and Luke are talking a little bit more about the finance side of things. Thank you for coming today. It would be great if you could all just kind of go around and introduce yourselves, the spring weeks that you've done and what year you're in. So if we start with Luke.
Yeah, sure. Hi guys, my name is Luke. I'm going into 5th year studying astrophysics, and I did spring week and have successfully converted that into a summer internship at Evercore.
Great. Isabella?
Hi everyone, I'm Isabella. I'm currently a 2nd year going to my 3rd year. I recently completed the spring weeks of firstly JP Morgan, then Credit Suisse, then Morgan Stanley. The 3 of them are quite different, so if anybody's interested in learning a bit more about one specific, I'm free to talk about it. And also if you have further questions after this session, just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great. Omar?
Hi, yeah, so my name's Omar. I'm currently doing a master's in economics and finance. I did maths for my undergrad and I did a Goldman Sachs spring week and summer internship.
And what division was that in, Omar?
Yeah, sorry, it was in both of them were in the securities division, so sales and trading now, I think.
Yeah, okay, great. Agnes?
Hi, I'm Agnes and I'm a 1st year and I'm studying computer science and maths. So the spring weeks I have done is James Street, the software engineering track, and also JP Morgan Technology. Yeah.
Great. And Kanish?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kanishk. I'm a 3rd year computer science and economics student. So in my 1st year, I did a spring week at JP Morgan in technology, software engineering, and that helped me get the internship for my 2nd year summer. And in my 2nd year, I did an internship, spring internship at BlackRock, but that was like postponed due to COVID. But I'll talk more about that later on. Yeah.
Amazing. And just to say, if anyone has any questions while we're kind of speaking, feel free to put them in the chat or message them to me directly, and we can answer them as you go or at the end. So to begin, it would be great to know what sort of societies and extracurriculars you will do or kind of did before to kind of get where you are now. Luke, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I guess in terms of societies, I did the investment society for my first few years, and I was assistant sector head of TMT. And I think that really gave me a kind of solid grounding in the financial markets. I also joined Playfair, which is a student-run consulting group, and I'm currently the head of consulting for that. But kind of outside of work and I guess physics and degree work, I do music, so I play jazz trumpet and piano. I joined the wind band for a while and went on some hikes and things with the adventure group and things like that, among other things.
Awesome. What about Isabella?
So basically, I'm still in my second year. So I've also worked at the investment society, but I was an assistant sector head. I was just an analyst, including of the same sector, TMT, but then I switched into industrials and natural resources. It was pretty cool because it actually gave me an idea of what equity research does. And that's actually what I'm applying for in the banks. So definitely like just joining the investment society just really triggered my interest for banking and specifically that division. I'm also the secretary of the St. Andrews Economic Society. So if anybody's in the mailing list, I'm the one writing the emails. And besides that, well, I guess that the most useful advice that I received last year, well, to start off, I didn't do a summer internship last year. Okay. The pandemic hit, I was a first year student. It was very hard. So besides all the extracurriculars, I was at this, I had this advice of just boost your CV in any way you can. So during my summer last year, I did like 3 short courses specifically of financial markets to find out whether I really enjoyed that. And the answer was yes, I really want to work in this system. I really want to work in this industry. So if you don't have any job opportunities for now, and if you can't, and if you see yourself getting rejected from applications in societies and etc., which happens to us all, just try to boost your CV in a way that you can. So doing short courses, reaching out to people, reading books really opened many paths for me, specifically books about finance. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Great. And I just want to also just say on that point, like, you don't need to go in knowing tons about the division or the industry.
Yeah.
That is the point of Spring Week, but it does help to have at least a base understanding, just so that you can show that you are interested and you made the decision to apply with like a reason. Omar?
Yeah, so I play football both at my undergrad and here with the football team. Other than that, my only really society was kind of in the junior common room committee of my college. So I was vice president. Yeah, I didn't do too much in the way of sort of investing in finance societies, but I think obviously the more exposure you have, the better to that world, especially, I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but applying for a Spring Week, you want to have a reason for why you've applied. You want to have been exposed to that a little bit before. So obviously that societies are a great way to have done that.
Yeah, cool. Kanishk?
Yeah, so in my first year, like I was part of the investment society and like Stacks Computing Society. Also, like I joined a lot of other societies as well, economics, maths, pretty much all the academic ones with my subjects. But then in my second year, I started a Society for Competitive Programming in St. Andrews. So I also put that on my resume. And currently I'm managing sponsorship for competitive programming and Stacks.
Agnes?
Since I'm a first year, so I didn't like have any work experience beforehand, but I joined quite a lot of hackathons, and I think I got lucky and like win some of them. Like one of them is like it's not a very big hackathon, but it's organized by AWS. So like it sounds very impressive, and like our project also get featured in their talks. So I guess it looks impressive in the CV, and I'm also like I'm also one of the undergraduate research assistant in computer science, and before I get the Spring Week, I also joined some like events by these companies. Like I joined the Jane Street Discover, which is like just a one-day talk about the firm and about trading and programming. And I also joined like the Optifa trading algorithmic trading competition. So like maybe like there's some kind of like related to like trading, related to finance. Yeah.
So Agnes, are you direct entry into second year then?
No, I'm a first year, doing first year courses.
Okay, and so are the Spring Weeks for like tech, do they allow like first years to do them too? Because usually like for banking and stuff, they're for second years on 4-year degrees.
For the JP Morgan one, I think JP Morgan is the only firm that I know that allows first year. I think Yeah, I think I've seen other first year doing this as well. And for Jane Street, I think they don't care about your year group. I know some people who are I think there's probably some people in their masters and third year, any year group. Yeah.
Okay, so are you planning to apply to more spring weeks next year?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So how did you all figure out what division you were interested in and what sort of firms you wanted to apply to? Luke, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, that's a good question, I guess. I guess I started probably a while ago trying to figure out, I guess, where I saw myself in 5-10 years, what I could see myself doing. And after a lot of research, I kind of saw that doing corporate development or strategy in a sort of aerospace company is kind of where I want to go. That's where I want to take my career. And then I kind of traced that back to what I need to do on graduation to get there. And kind of the route that I saw was that doing a stint in banking, at least as an analyst, and building up that kind of foundational skill set would be one of the best routes to go into that. And I guess for me, the investment banking division is really interesting because it's kind of a combination of strategy and finance, especially in M&A advisory, which is what Evercore does. I think that the possibility to work with executives of the largest international and national companies on deals that make the front page of financial news is really, really interesting and motivating to me. And I looked into sales and trading and risk and leverage finance and a lot of the other divisions that were interesting. But for me, I think something that incorporates strategy and has that kind of clear path to eventually working in industry is something that was really interesting to me. So I'd say that's the reason and as to why I chose investment banking and I guess how I made that decision, if that makes sense.
And Evercore is a boutique, so could you also just touch a little bit on why you chose Evercore and to accept their summer internship over applying to one of the kind of more known like bulge bracket banks?
Yeah, sure. So I guess for me, I'm interested almost solely in M&A advisory, and the boutiques that I apply to focus primarily on M&A advice or at least capital markets advice. And I kind of after talking to a lot of people at different firms, thought that the culture and the experience that I would gain at Evercore, especially with the really, really lean deal teams, you're talking like 4 or 5 analysts on a big deal, would give me a better experience and allow me to build more skills and more quickly than maybe working in a larger firm or a bulge bracket. And especially I think the opportunity for me to kind of get my name on a deal is really important for going into corporate development or another kind of career in the future if I decided to do that.
Cool. Yeah, and I would just say to everyone, don't dismiss the boutiques. They're amazing experiences and sometimes even kind of better in terms of hands-on experience and the kind of training and skill set that you'd gain at one of the big banks. And just because other people applying to like JP Morgan and places like that doesn't mean that one of the boutiques isn't kind of better and maybe more suited to you. So I would recommend looking into them. Cool. Isabella?
I guess it's a very interesting question. I mean, I mentioned that I was already interested in equity research because of what I did in the investment society. I really like that. So I was looking for something similar to equity research. But the whole point of spring weeks, especially of these big banks like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Credit Suisse as well, is that they want you to have an understanding of what the bank does. So it's totally okay if in your application you put like, yeah, I'm interested in global capital markets, and then in the middle of the spring week you realize, no, what was I doing? I just want, like, I don't know, sales and trading, something completely different. So you don't have to choose your decision now, like if I'm speaking to people that are applying, but I definitely had already an idea in mind, and the spring week only reinforced that. The more I spoke to people that work in equity research, the more I felt like engaged and interested in it. So for me, it was easy to find out my division, but for some people it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, and I think when you apply to do the assessment center at the end of your internship, a lot of the times they do give you the option to switch divisions, so that's not an issue either. Omar?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what Isabella said. Like when I was applying, I really had no idea. A lot of the case, I was applying to whatever divisions were left open. So I wrote a couple cover letters for technology. In the end, I'd say I got very lucky. I really liked sales and trading when I tried out. But again, like as Isabella said, they're not really expecting you to come in knowing all about all these different divisions. There's a kind of learning a lot about what the bank's actually doing, what the different divisions are and how they're different. And I think the idea is after the spring week, you're much better informed as to what might be the best place for you.
Yeah. Agnes?
I applied to like technology and software engineering, like mainly because like I'm a computer science student, and like in high school I really like math and physics, those science subjects. So like I was looking for something that I was looking for something that gives me the problem solving side of science, and like maybe like I was looking for something similar. So I think technology would be a good fit. Yeah.
And for both Kanishka and Agnes, did you see anyone on any of your spring weeks in like tech that wasn't a computer science student?
Yeah, I think like especially at JP Morgan, like I would say maybe 30 to 40% of people were not studying computer science. And there were also some people from a variety of different engineering subjects, and also maybe some art students, so and economic students as well. So.
And did you need any coding knowledge or experience to do it?
For JP Morgan Spring Week, I would say no, like it was just like a form and like a simple video interview. But for BlackRock, there was a coding test in Java.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and yeah, for Jane Street software engineering, you need to be able to code because there is a coding assessment, which is not very difficult, but like it takes some time to finish, and yeah.
Cool. Also, what did you all do on your spring weeks? Kanish, do you want to start?
Yeah, so like when I went to JP, fortunately it was in person, so it was quite nice. It was 5 days long. We learned a lot about the firm, the different lines of businesses beyond just beyond investment banking. We also learned about other lines of businesses at JP. There were some workshops on cybersecurity. We did some work shadowing sessions. That was fun. But they also took us like bowling. We had like other events, great networking events, like at the end of the day. I guess it's even if you don't like the spring week per se at a firm, it's a good opportunity to network with other attendees at the spring week. So I guess I found that very useful as well. And yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity to learn more about the firm and network with senior management, because like they were literally talking to us at meals, and there would be free pizza a few times. So it was a nice casual environment.
Yeah, if your spring week is in person, then there's lots of perks to look forward to. So that's another reason to apply. Agnes?
My JP Morgan Spring Week experience is a bit different since it's online and it's 3 days and it's mainly talks. But we also get like one short networking session. And although like my Spring Week is like insight into technology, but they also show us like different divisions around the bank, like and then tell us like what they do. And at the end, we need to finish some task, which it's like some programming task, like involves some data structure and like some tasks like detecting fraud transactions, stuff like that. So we have to do the write the code and also take a video of it. And in terms of like social fun aspect, it's not official, but at the end of the spring week, we actually decided that we want to do the attenders like us decided that we want to do a social session ourselves. So like after the 3 days, we actually like have Zoom call and then just chat with each other. So I get to know like other participants from different universities, which I think is nice. And in terms of the James Street one, is also free. Is like it's 3 days. And it's very intense, and because there's only like less than 20 participants, and we are put into small groups. So it's like a group of 4, and there's one mentor. And there's 2 tasks. The first task is you have to write a snake game in a very difficult programming language. So it's a functional programming, if you know what it is. And it's very, very challenging because it's very, very different from the previous programming that we have done. But the mentor is very helpful. And when we have questions, you can just ask and you get feedback immediately because you're in such a small group. Like you just get help immediately. And if you can't set up anything, they have a tech support room as well. You can just go in. So it's very short, but you feel like you learn a lot because you get feedback immediately. And the second part of the spring week is like a trading game. Like you need to write code to like trade different assets like bonds and ETFs, stuff like that. And you also get like really in a really small group and really mentor to guide you. So you learn a lot, but it's very intense. Yeah.
So you'd say it was like a good mix of both finance and kind of tech?
I would say it's like more tech, and like the first part, the programming task is like more tech, and the trading game, like we also need to code. So I would say like half. Like you also get to learn some finance stuff. Like, yeah.
Cool. Omar?
So I think my one was 2 weeks long, and the first week was lots of lectures, essentially 5 hours of lectures a day, just introducing you to all the different desks, what the role was, what they do, and a little bit about the role of the bank in general. I think towards the end of the day, they'd let us out kind of onto the floor to talk to some of the salespeople and traders. And then the second week was entirely just almost like very, very little in terms of structure. You were left on your own to go and speak to the people on the floor, and you had to give a presentation at the end of the week. The idea was that you'd kind of run it by the different people you're interacting with and cobble up together an idea to present to the other spring interns.
And I've heard that for the Goldman Spring Week, they like assess you throughout and base whether you get a summer internship on like your performance on the Spring Week itself. Is that true?
So I think like everyone else, there's an interview at the end. Obviously, I can't speak about other banks. I think they definitely gave us the impression that every interaction you have with someone is an opportunity to make an impression on them, and they'd be sending essentially not spying on you sort of, but they'd be sending out an email at the end just to see, all right, who left an impression, what do people think. So kind of every interaction is an opportunity for you to leave an impression, to leave your mark.
Cool. Isabella?
I was about to jump into this question because it's very interesting, because I didn't know that I was kind of being assessed throughout the spring week. I thought that we were going to have, just a lot of sessions, and then at the end it was going to be the interview, and then you get to be considered for a summer job. But then at JP Morgan, we only had the program was only 2 days long. And then I didn't know that I was being assessed. I was just genuinely interested in like just asking questions to people, wanting to know more about the firm, and, just getting engaged in projects and everything. So then I got a call from one of the managing directors saying like, yeah, you really stood out as a participant. And I was like, were you guys actually paying attention? Because there were like 50 people in a Zoom call, So you really want to make a good impression, whether that is virtual or in person. Because, like, for example, for Credit Suisse, we talked to many different managing directors and senior executives. and to have like a one-on-one conversation with the employees, it gives you the opportunity of asking them questions, like specific ones, asking their views, their market insights. And then these are probably going to be the people that are going to interview you in your assessment center. So getting a connection with them during your spring week is actually a very smart move. So don't do it only because you're being assessed during the spring week, but also because that will help you in your assessment center. And also, like, you took an extreme amount of time to prepare for these spring weeks to apply. You want to make the most of that experience. So ask as many questions as possible. Just try to understand everything. And it's okay if you're confused, they understand. And they're not assessing whether, like, you don't know what bank resource management does. Like, they don't care whether you don't know that. They want to know whether you're confident enough to ask that and to be upfront about it, you know, and to really be curious and try to understand things. I guess that's what they're really looking after.
Yeah, that's really useful advice. Thank you. Luke?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my experience was a little bit different. Evercore just kind of cancelled their spring week. And instead we had kind of informal, almost like catch-up sessions with a lot of the bankers at varying levels and in different coverage teams. So we just had an opportunity over about 3 days to call with the bankers and ask some questions about what they did. And they kind of gave an overview of the firm and kind of their impressions of it. And yeah, it was really interesting just to kind of speak to people and get more of a, I guess, an inside view into what people think about, you know, Evercore and the work that they're doing.
And did you still have to interview for a summer internship, or did they automatically give you all offers?
Yeah, sure. So they fast-tracked us to, it's kind of like a catch-up call with HR. So the HR call was a while later, and that was just kind of going over kind of what we'd done since the spring week and after COVID had hit. And then after that, we went to a assessment center for the summer internship.
Okay. And I've heard that they only take 6 spring interns, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think our assessment center was 12 people and they narrowed it down to 6.
Okay, cool. So this is just kind of for everyone. Did anyone have like any organizations or mentors supporting them through the process, or were they part of like any diversity programs such as SEO or Rare Recruit or anything? Kanishk, do you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. So I am a part of SEO London. I would definitely recommend if you're eligible to join, mainly for the information. So I guess sometimes the problem comes for first years that you don't have the information. But in my first year, I didn't join SEO. So how I found out about the JP internship was through a technology showcase on campus. So in like October 2018, they'd come on campus in our CS lab, and they just said, even though you're a first year, just make sure you apply for spring week. And I applied, and SEO London generally does definitely help out. And not just for spring weeks, like for summer internships and grad roles as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I would really recommend. I go to a lot of their talks and stuff, and they've been so helpful with my applications and stuff. There's a couple of other organizations as well called like Rare Recruitment, Upreach and stuff. Some of them have slightly stricter eligibility requirements, but as long as you kind of pass those, then some of them will give you like one-to-one support with all the stages of your application process. So it can be really, really useful. How many firms did each of you apply to approximately? And do you think it's like better to apply to lots of firms or only the firms that really suit what you want to do? Luke, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I guess answering the second part first, I think it's important to kind of strike the balance between quality and quantity. I think it's definitely a numbers game. So you do have to submit probably more than you would have submitted for kind of an ordinary job, if you want to call it that. But you really do have to make sure that every application you submit is is the highest quality you can make it, or it's basically pointless. So the way I kind of did it is I made a big list of all of the firms that I was interested in and separated them into tiers. The top tier being, the ones that I would be really, really interested in working for, like kind of the dream firms. And then kind of the second one being ones that I'll be interested in, but maybe like super passionate about. And I started from the bottom of the top tier to kind of gain some experience with the aptitude tests and the assessment centers and things, and gain some practice. And all in all, I think I ended up applying to about 15 banks overall. I was kind of lucky in that Evercore was one of the first like people to get back to me, which kind of worked out like perfectly. But I do think, there's not much point in applying to places that you're not that interested in, if you really aren't that interested in them. But I do think that, if you would be happy going somewhere, shoot off an application. Definitely. I mean, it's a numbers game, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is also a lot about luck and just like getting familiar with the application process, particularly since it will be one of the first ones that you do. Isabella?
Yeah, I totally echo what Luke said. You need to have some sort of notion of like, quantity and quality, because you don't want to be applying to 30 banks or boutiques or tech companies and just getting all rejections because you didn't work well on those applications. Like, you really need to focus on them. People talk a lot about, you write one cover letter and then you just copy and paste to other banks, you just adapt it. That's not true. Don't do that. Each bank is very unique. So does your cover letter have to be. Also, the tests, they take a lot of time. So you need to be paying attention to what you're doing and getting familiar with the culture of the bank. So roughly, I guess I applied to about, I confused whether it was 10 or 11, but I'm sure it was at least 10. And what I did, I guess what Luke did is very smart. I wish I had that idea. But what I did was roughly just make a list, not organized, nothing at all. It was just the names that were popping into my mind. And as the banks were opening the applications, I started applying. So Goldman Sachs was the first one that I applied for because they opened really early. And I guess the last one I applied for was probably Credit Suisse. They opened really late. So, and as soon as I got one call for an interview, I was like, okay, that's time to stop and focus on the interview, So I wasn't doing applications anymore after I got my first call of interview.
Yeah, that sounds like a good piece of advice. Omar?
I think I applied to 8 or 9. And again, just exactly what everyone else has said, especially for the spring week when you don't have that much experience, you haven't been at uni for too long. Everyone's CVs aren't going to be massively different. So you just kind of just got to apply to as many as you can. That said, like, I've definitely had it, and I'm sure others have had it as well, where you got an interview coming up and you're thinking in your back of your mind, like, I really don't care about this. I really don't want this. You don't want to find yourself in that position. Like, don't apply to companies that you really don't want to wind up at, exactly like Luke and Isabel were saying. So just, kind of find the balance that you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Agnes?
So since I'm a first year, like there's not many firms like accepting first years. So like I didn't really apply to a lot. I think I probably applied to like more summer internships than spring weeks. Yeah, like definitely less than 10.
Okay, sure. And Kanesh, do you also want to talk about your summer internship?
Yeah, sure. So most of my focus has actually been towards summer internships rather than spring weeks. But like in my first year, like I only applied for the JP Spring Week. And I wish I had applied to more, because it would have been nice if I did another one, because a few of my friends in first year, I think, did Morgan Stanley. And then in my second year, I applied for a few summer internships at banks, but then they transferred me to Spring Weeks because of my graduation date. But then I just withdrew from those. But mostly I applied for like, I think 3 or 4 Spring Weeks in my second year, including Jane Street. And I think that was like the first year where Jane Street had like such a spring program. And in my year, Citadel and some other companies in the quant finance space, they started launching more of these schemes similar to what banks were doing. But for summer internships, yeah, I would say, like, especially in software engineering, if you can apply to a lot of places, just go for it. Because unlike traditional banks, many of the companies just look for your CV and your GitHub. So I would say the process is more general. So you can just apply with your CV to a lot of places. And there's no harm. And I also devote time for interviews. So I would just have like a day when I would travel for interviews, like on Tuesday evening, and on Wednesday I would do the interview and then come back on Wednesday. So just have like a plan where you would, how you would schedule interviews and coding tests, or any assessment, etc.
And Kanish, you applied to quite a few summer internships. How did you balance your time between that and schoolwork?
Yeah, so I would say I applied to like hundreds of places in my second year, but my success rate was lower in second year. So maybe 15 or 20% of places would get back to me, and many of them would just ghost me or reject me. So let's say every week I would get 1 or 2 coding tests or like an interview. And I would spend maybe 5 to 10 hours on either applying or the interviews per week. Sometimes traveling can take time. So if I'm going on the train, I would try and study on the train if I can. And in my second year, in my second year of applications, in my third year, I applied to like maybe around 40, 50 companies. But this time, having done a summer internship and a few more spring weeks, the success rate was a bit higher. So I did get around the same number of coding tests and interviews.
Yeah, I once went to a talk by someone on like careers, and they said that if you're applying for like investment banking or consulting, obviously the job is going to be so many hours and intense. You should probably be able to handle like lots of applications on top of your schoolwork. So I suppose it's just kind of gearing you up, but you also have to remember that like some of the point of university is to get a job, and if you can do that earlier on, then it might be worth not spending as much time like on your schoolwork sometimes, just so that you can focus on that your applications. There's a question that's come in. Someone's asking if you could explain a little bit more about the different tests that you had to do for applications. Isabella, do you want to start?
I guess that for each bank is different. I guess that pretty much all of them you have to go through a numerical test at least, which are very like quick reasoning numerical tests. So like you don't need a lot of maths knowledge, but you have to be able to do them quickly. And so that would be my advice, would be prepare as much as you can. There are many resources online, so just type investment banking numerical tests and there are going to be plenty of websites. But of course it really varies, as I said, like for HSBC, that like they did like a whole platform for the tests. So you go through numerical tests, reasoning tests, situational tests. So situational tests, like they so pretty much they want to assess how would you react under certain situations that might happen while you're working at the bank. So you just can't prepare for that. The most that you can do is look at the bank's culture, what they do, what they really are looking for in the kind of behavior that of people that are working there. Because, for example, I was rejected of HSBC right after I did the tests. So I don't know whether that was numerical, situational, or reasoning. Like you just have to be ready, but there are plenty of resources online that you can look at.
And Kanish, do you want to talk about like the tech tests that you had to do?
Yeah, sure. So like Agnes would also agree, for JP Morgan, I don't think there was any test. It was a fairly straightforward application. But I just had like a virtual video interview, and I think many banks, even for the divisions, would use something called HireVue or equivalent. So they just ask like, why are you interested in this role? Tell me about a technology you like. Why do you want to do the spring week? Just typical questions. For BlackRock, it was a bit more, I would say a bit harder. But they'd given a lot of time for the test. So BlackRock gives a 96-hour window for software engineering and a 72-hour window for all other divisions to complete the assessment. So it was just a test with 4 questions, 3 of which could only be solved in Java. And there was 1 question which could be solved in a variety of languages. Most companies, from my experience, when they give coding assessments, they let you use any programming language of your choice. But there would be some companies who would have a preference. Like Hudson River Trading for their summer internship would only want C++ for the core developers. Some of the Dutch market makers would only want Java, C# or C++. So it can depend on company.
Okay. And just sort of ending things off, Luke, do you want to talk about any advice that you might have for like interviews?
Sure, I guess. I think it depends again on the bank that you apply for. So for Evercore, there was a HR kind of interview round first, and that's normally just things like competency questions, like tell us about a time when you solved a challenge or you worked with someone difficult. Revise answers, almost learn the answers for like why investment banking, why are you interested in that company, why did you like choose the subject that you did, off by heart. I think every HR interview that I've done has asked exactly those questions, and they're always the first questions, and it just kind of like puts you at ease a little bit if you can just kind of go through the answer kind of right away without even like putting yourself on the spot. I'd also say, definitely at least for mergers and acquisitions, read about a recent deal. That's also a very, very, very common question. Be able to talk about a recent deal, why it was interesting, what the implications might be, why the company was going to acquire the other strategically, and what the financial impacts of that might be. That was really actually important at Evercore, especially in the kind of technical interviews, but I'll talk through that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I guess for the first round HR interviews, I think the biggest piece of advice is just, make sure that you're good at going through that kind of star structure, situation, task, action, result, and kind of thinking clearly on the spot. For the later round interviews, especially at Evercore, there were some kind of more technical ones. So I'd say definitely learn kind of basic accounting principles. How do the three financial statements link together? You need to know kind of how to convert between enterprise value, equity value, kind of these basic financial and accounting fundamentals, but that are kind of difficult to just kind of know off the bat if you haven't been in an investment society or anything like that before. But yeah, I think basically just do as much preparation as you can, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, great. So I realize it's 6 o'clock. Does anyone have any final advice? Also happy to stay behind and answer any kind of questions if anyone wants to do that. I think Kanishka's posting some opportunities as well in the chat. If that's it, then yeah, if anyone has any questions, then I'm happy to stay, or if any of the speakers are happy to stay too. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. Again, please follow our social medias for any future events and any resources that we'll be posting in the upcoming weeks or so. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us. I guess I can stay if anybody has got like another question. A lot of people are leaving the room, but if anybody has a specific one.
Yeah, there's one question that's come into the chat. So someone's asked if firms requiring, if like firms require a background in economics or management. So if there's any way that an art student doesn't have much experience in these areas could consider applying. I think you all do sort of STEM related subjects, but did you come across many art students on your spring weeks?
So I guess I can answer that one. I think half of actually the people at the Evercore Assessment Center were humanities. I know someone who got in, studied geography. So I think, yeah, certainly as long as you can do some basic maths, there's really nothing stopping you from applying to and succeeding in investment banking.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as long as you sort of can show that you have numerical skills through the tests and any questions that come at you, particularly for banking, they really don't mind. In fact, sometimes some of the firms, like I've heard, Goldman Sachs really encourages like English students and philosophy students to apply, for example, because they like the abstract reasoning and critical reasoning skills that you can show. If you do want to indicate some further interest in like finance, then it is useful to have done some sort of maybe finance related role as part of like an investment society or a consulting society or something. But it's not a prerequisite as long as you know exactly why you're applying, because you don't want to be like an English student that's just applying, for no real reason. Another question is, did anyone apply to opportunities in the US, and if there's anything in particular to be aware of? Kanishk, did you?
I mean, I've tried a lot in the US, but like it is definitely a bit harder. I've gone for talks in the US, like some companies that have a smaller presence in the UK, for instance, Two Sigma and DRW. They have events in the US that are more frequent, so you can just join the Zoom sessions or you submit your CV and apply. For summer internships, I have applied. I have got a few coding tests. I have interviewed a few times, but haven't had success yet. I guess one way would be to work in a company in the UK or in the EU. And then if you worked a few years, it gets easier to transfer. So like my friend, he had an offer at a prop shop in London, and they have offices in London and New York. And they said that after some time he can transfer. So I guess that's a more viable option.
Yeah. Also, just to add, spring weeks are generally specific to the UK, so you won't have spring week programs in the US, but some firms do summer internships for second years or some sort of like insight program, but they tend to be catered towards like diversity, so potentially only for BAME or women or things like that. Also, I've heard from people that in the US it's much more of a networking culture. So to get your kind of CV through the door, you have to basically know someone at the firm. You don't have to have known them personally. You can just kind of like message people on LinkedIn, and obviously like the St. Andrews has a great US alumni network, so you'll probably find lots of people working in US offices. But yeah, it is really important to network and also be aware, be like clear as to why you're applying for the US office rather than a UK office if there is one. Someone has, carry on.
Just one other thing. I guess that's actually one of the main attractions of working in a big bank, because they have a lot of mobility programs. So one thing that the managing director of JP Morgan told me, like, I'm from Brazil, and he literally said like, oh, if you're working for JP Morgan for like 2 years and you want to apply for a position in Brazil, you can. If you want to apply for a position in Hong Kong, you can. If you want to apply for a position in the US, you can. So it's really easy to move around in these big banks. So I wouldn't be too worried whether you start your career in London or in Europe. You can easily move to the US if you want to. And yeah, so I wouldn't worry about that too much, specifically about these huge banks. But of course, like, just be aware of the differences between an American bank and a European bank, because Credit Suisse is way different from Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. And I realized that during the spring week. So you really want to be working in a bank that has a culture that is similar to yours, independent of your location.
Yeah, and then following on from that question they've asked, so if you're a student from the US, would you say spring weeks aren't as practical? I would personally say, like, if you can get a spring week, if you are eligible, then even if you can't convert it to a summer internship in the US, then it is still a great experience to have, and you'll still learn a lot from it. Does anyone have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can help because you do get a name on your CV. So the HR in the US, like when they'll be reviewing your CV, you have something which shows like a big bank or a trading firm or something. And I think that it did help me when the HR was based in the US. reviewing the CV.
Yeah. Someone's also asked if you've done any work experience during year 12 and 13, for example, at MasterCard, does that count as a spring week? So a spring week is like a set program usually referred to as spring week or spring insight, and generally they're the ones that convert to a summer internship. But that is still kind of credible experience that you can use when you're applying to a summer internship. It's just that they might not convert to a summer internship directly. Another question that's come in is, can I apply for spring weeks now as a first year? So as Agnes said, there are a few available spring weeks for first years, but the reason why we wanted to do this talk now is because the applications open up within the next few months, really, and you do want to get them in as soon as possible. So for example, I think Goldman opens in June or July. So you would basically be applying kind of in the summer of your first year to do it in your second year.
Yeah, I also think that there'll be some inside days running over the summer. So I guess that's a good way where someone can network, and then they might be able to form connections and then maybe apply for spring weeks after the inside day. So just watch out for inside days. There are lots of inside days.
Yeah, exactly. Like lots of firms host like webinars and things. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like if you're a first year, then like you'll be applying like next year, but like some of firms like open, I think J Street also opens quite early. So you want to like be there earlier to apply and like to prepare for it, and like maybe like try to learn something or get some experience in your summer. Like if you don't get internship, maybe you can do some courses, or like I think it's easier for like tech people because we can just do a project on something and then like have something to show when you apply.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like in CS, like there are a lot of options beyond getting a job or like some work experience to improve your profile, and working on like side projects can definitely help. That being said, like if you do maths or economics, you can come up with similar projects on the side as well for like data science projects. So I guess those things can help you if you have time over the summer.
Yeah, cool. Someone's also asked, where do I find the insight days? I'm assuming you mean like insight days rather than spring weeks.
Yeah, I mean SEO London or like Bright Network. You can message me and I can send you a few links. Let's see. Where else? Like Rate My Placement. If you just search UK Insight Days, actually Google will compile a lot of them together. And then you can also see lists of companies. So these will always be advertised on the company websites. So you can just go to like, if you're interested in a company, for instance, for Flow Traders, they have like whatever, flowtraders.com/events, and you can see the kind of events they're running. And usually the Inside Day will also be there on the website.
Yeah, I would also say like sign up for the company emailing lists, the ones that you're interested in, because they'll send out all of the opportunities available. And also like some of the like Facebook pages run by other UK universities.
Yes, definitely.
Because a lot of them post relevant opportunities and webinars and things, and some of them are very active. Someone has asked, could some of the tech students give some examples of the projects they did? Kanishk?
Yeah, sure. So I guess firstly, like if you're doing a course like CS 1006 or CS 2006, those projects are a good starting point. Because I'm also studying economics and finance. One of the projects I did was on Markowitz portfolio theory, but I used Python to optimize the portfolio. So it was basically a way where you can weight portfolios and predict returns based on that. And yeah, like I guess there are lots of other ways where you can find out, like on YouTube, there'll be a lot of videos. So you can, if you can message me, I can send some videos where you can get started. Just make sure you spend time doing projects, but also solving questions on lead code. Because it's in tech, it's a mix of both, like your problem solving skills and also your past experience and your skills doing larger projects. So.
Yeah, I think for me, like I joined a few hackathons, and I think like for me, because like sometimes I struggle to have motivation to do projects, so I think hackathons is a good idea, like a good start, because if you join the hackathon, like
you'll have a project automatically.
Yeah, you have to do something, and you have a deadline probably like in a few days. You have to hand in a project, and they give you a theme and a problem to solve. Then you can like come up with something because like it gives you pressure to come up with something. So so I think hackathons is a good start. And if you say like give examples of project, I think like first like the AWS hackathon that I mentioned was actually a really long-term hackathon, so it's like 2 months or something, and it's an app that like detects you. You take a selfie of yourself, and it can detect like how healthy you are or how mentally healthy you are. And like it's a big team. Is there's some medical students and some computer science students, like a lot of really diverse teammates, and they also come from like different places in the world. So I think this one is a more unique project in terms of the other projects that I did, because like it's a bigger team, so you learn something like version control, how to collaborate with a big team. So I talk about this a lot in interviews. Yeah.
Cool. Are there any more questions? I don't see any. I'll give you 30 seconds. If not, thank you again all for coming. And if you do have any more questions at any point, feel free to message the Guild's Instagram page or message me on LinkedIn. Always happy to help further. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers for coming today. That was really useful.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ragvi, for inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. We'll be happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn and answer any further questions, really. Thank you so much.
Yeah, guys, please do connect on LinkedIn, or you can just message me on Facebook as well if you don't have LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Cheers. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Bye.